Hello everyone, it's Samuel here, and for those of you who don't know me, I'm a Brit living and waiting to work in Canada. Today I wanted to make a video about some things that I like better in Canada than I do in the UK. Canada and the UK are quite similar in some ways. For example, we share a language. We also share a monarch for the time being. And we have cultural similarities also. But there are quite a few things that are very, very different. Now, I've spent most of my life in Oxford in the UK, but now I'm living in Kelowna, BC. These are two cities which in some ways are actually quite similar, but in other ways are worlds apart. Obviously, Oxford and Kelowna can't be seen as accurate microcosms for their respective countries, but for the purposes of this video, they will be a metric by which we judge, broadly speaking, the countries that they're in. So here are 5 things in Canada that I like more than in the UK. Now, the first thing on my list of things that I like better in Canada than in the UK is the scenery. Canada is known for its natural beauty. Canada has mountains, rivers, forests, prairies, big ice areas of ice. It's Canada. It also has farmland. It has sort of deserty kind of environments, which is where, Kelowna is in that deserty kind of environment. There's a lot of variety spread over an enormous area of land. And it's really, really beautiful. Canada is really sparsely populated, and so there are huge swathes of the country that seem almost undisturbed by humans. The UK, however, is also beautiful, but has a lot more people in it, and is frankly much, much less dramatic. And while I've only explored a tiny amount of BC and an even smaller amount of Alberta, I can still say from experience that Canada has a much wilder, more varied and more dramatic topography than the UK. Not to mention wildlife. I mean, you've got bears, you've got cougars, you've got coyotes, you've got moose, you've got beavers, you've got eagles. It feels like an actual country with wildlife, whereas in the UK, everything seems much more tame. You've got deer and foxes and badgers and squirrels and mice, which are cute, but bears and moose and eagles versus blackbirds. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. The second thing on my list, which is related to the first, is just the amount of space in Canada. As we all know, Canada is way bigger than the UK. In fact, you could fit the UK 41 times into Canada. That's very difficult to wrap your mind around, so I'm going to show you visually what that looks like. So this is a website called thetruesize.com, and it shows you the true size of countries. Now, why this is useful is because the map, as most people are used to seeing it, the world map, is actually quite deceptive in terms of countries' relative sizes. That's because you're trying to squeeze a sphere into a flat plane, which is really difficult to do. So here you can see Canada and the UK, and if I drag the UK over Canada, you can see how much bigger Canada is than the UK. In fact, how much bigger British Columbia is. You can see the border along here. How much bigger BC is than the UK. And just to demonstrate what I was saying before about how the further north and south the map goes, the more skewed the sizes of countries are, look what happens when I bring the UK up to the top. Look how much bigger it looks. And that's just crazy to me, because a lot of people think Greenland, for example, I know we're going on a tangent here, but I think it's interesting, that Greenland is, it's the size of Africa. But it's not. It's sort of the size of the DRC or something like that. And I just find that really interesting. Now, to zoom in further to this, Canada and the UK, I'm going to compare Kelowna and Oxford. Now, in the green, you can see Kelowna. Now, this is the size of Kelowna relative to the size of Oxford. Now, Oxford is a much, much more densely populated city than Kelowna. For example, you can see here, Oxford has a population of about 165,000, according to sizeexplorer.com, and Kelowna has, for some reason, a much more exact population, but around 115, 120,000 people. That's 115 or 120,000 people living in this area, whereas Oxford is 165,000 in this area. Now, what does that mean for city planning? Well, Oxford has a history that goes back to about the 12th century, and Kelowna, as we know it, was established around the beginning of the 19th century. So Oxford is significantly older, which means it has significantly denser infrastructure. One of everyone's complaints about Oxford is parking. So let's zoom into the city centre. Let's go to about here. Okay, so this is the centre of Oxford. Can you see any car parks? I mean, there's a car park underneath here in Westgate, but there is precious little parking in the city centre. Flip over to Kelowna. Let's just zoom in about the same amount to Kelowna city centre. Look how much parking there is. This is the shopping centre. This is the amount of parking outside the shopping centre. There's more car park than shopping centre. In fact, there's almost more car park than anything else. This is Quarry, which is an area around my church. And I'm just going to drop us into street view over here. Right, so over here, this is a two-way road. So cars come both directions along this road. And as you can see, it's quite narrow. There's a car right here, somehow passing the Google Maps truck. And this is fairly typical. I mean, this is a particularly narrow spot, but it's not unusual to see a road this narrow that's supposed to go both ways. Conversely, you will not find, like, I don't know where I'm going. You will not find an area like this in Kelowna. Random street, don't know where this is. But this is far more typical of Kelowna. Huge, wide roads, proper parking spaces on, well, these are not even parking spaces. These are cycle lanes, because you can park in your own on your own property. Think of that. Think of a guaranteed parking space, or 2 or 3, on your own property. That is really quite something, isn't it? So this is fairly typical for Kelowna. This is not atypical for Oxford. The third thing is a really small thing, but it came to mind for some reason, and that is there are so many dollar stores in Canada. Now, for those in the UK watching, they're kind of the equivalent to Poundland. Now, Poundland used to sell every single item for £1, but in 2019 they changed that and everything's just sort of low priced instead. This is the same idea with the Canadian dollar stores. Dollar Tree, Dollarama, the Dollar Store, all of these different dollar stores. There are lots and lots of them, which is really convenient because things genuinely are quite a bit cheaper there, and they sell a lot of random stuff like Poundland in the UK, but I would argue more so. They're also everywhere. Like, think of how many Pretz there are in London, and just imagine that they are dollar stores. It's not quite that, but it feels like there's a dollar store around every corner. I enjoy going there. It's a great place to pick up, bits and bobs that you couldn't find or were too expensive in Walmart or wherever you go shopping usually. And I just think dollar stores are a great gift, and we should get more equivalents in the UK, just my opinion. The fourth thing that I like about Canada more than the UK is the fact that in Canada there is snow in the wintertime. Now this is pretty much universal across the whole country, but even in the warmer places in Canada, like Kelowna, we are, fun fact, the second warmest non-coastal city in the country, we still get a decent, by English standards, decent amount of snow in the winter. Now, I've only been in Kelowna for one winter, but we had a good foot of snow on 2 or 3 separate occasions, and it stayed around for a while. The rest of Canada, most of the rest, is inundated with snow for months and months on end. In Quesnel, where Julie's family is at the moment, they have around 4 to 5 months of snow on the ground the whole time, which is too much. That's ridiculous. But even in Kelowna, a warm place in Canada, you get a decent amount of snow, and for an English person, that's really nice. In England, conversely, and especially Oxford, we'll get snowfall maybe twice a year, and by snowfall, I just mean there's snow falling. This doesn't take into account whether it lands and settles or not, but to have a good 6 inches of snow to stay on the ground for more than a day is a miracle and happens pretty rarely. So as someone who has been fairly deprived of snow for most of his life, it's quite nice to come to Canada. And the last thing that I like more in Canada than the UK is kilometers per hour. A lot of Canadians were surprised when I told them that in England we used miles and miles per hour when measuring distances and speeds. And I was someone who was totally behind miles and miles per hour until I moved to Canada, and I realized that it makes so much more sense to use kilometers per hour, and meters rather than yards, miles, and miles per hour. What's a yard? What's a mile? What is a mile an hour? It's confusing to say the least, especially when you have like a half metric, half imperial system like in the UK, which Canada also has. So neither country has got its measurements quite sorted out yet. But in terms of roads, distances, and speeds, kilometers an hour makes more sense than miles per hour. And I never thought I'd say that, but I've been converted, and it's going to be a challenge going back to miles an hour if ever I move back to the UK or move to the US. I'm not planning on doing it, but it could. But you know, who knows? I wasn't planning on moving to Canada either until, you know, fairly recently. I hope you found this video interesting, informative, or at least entertaining, and join me next time when I make the flip video, 5 things that I prefer in the UK than in Canada. I hope you enjoyed, and see you then. Bye! In Canada, I'm really rambling here. This is going to be a pain to edit. Even the Highlands of Scotland and the Wales in mountains. The mountains in Wales. This doesn't make any sense. Oh dear. And this is what happens when I don't write a script. Cougars. Beavers. Yeah, I know there are a couple of beavers in Scotland, but it's different.